The veil was too tight around her throat, and the boots pinched like shackles. Clara stood in front of the chapel mirror, white lace draped over bruised wrists, her breath catching with every heartbeat. Outside, the town gathered, pretending this was a wedding. But she knew better. This was a sale. Her father had traded her to the preacher's son, a man who read scripture by day and broke ribs by night. "You're lucky he even wants you," her father had said that morning. "You're not exactly fresh stock." She had swallowed that shame, just like every other time. But now the church bell tolled and her knees buckled. She couldn't do it. Not again. Not this time. Clara bolted, out the side door, down the gravel slope, the lace ripping behind her like hunted skin. Townsfolk shouted. Men began to run, but her limp from the last discipline slowed her, and she barely made it to the riverbank before the thunder of boots closed in. "There she is," someone barked. "Get her dress. Don't let her cross." Clara scrambled through the reeds, tears blinding her. The river was swollen from rain, fast and deep, and she didn't know how to swim. But she stepped toward it anyway. Drowning, she figured, might feel cleaner than what waited behind her. Then, sudden stillness, a presence. Across the river, half shielded by fog and pine, stood a figure. Bare chest marked with paint, hair long, expression unreadable. Apache. He didn't move, just watched. Clara froze. Behind her, voices shouted. A hand grabbed her sleeve. "Don't you run again, girl!" She yanked free, fell to her knees. The Apache stepped forward, into the water. One slow step, then another. He didn't speak, didn't gesture, but his eyes never left hers. Then, from his belt, he pulled a rope, smooth, strong, and tossed one end across the river. It landed at her feet. Clara stared. Behind her, boots thundered. Ahead of her, a silent man waited, holding the other end of the lifeline. Her hands shook as she grabbed it. And the moment she did, he pulled. Strong. Unbreaking. And without a word, the river stopped being a grave and became her escape. The water was ice. It tore through her boots, swallowed her hem, and dragged at her knees like it wanted her back. But Clara gripped the rope tighter, her fingers blistering with every jerk forward. The Apache didn't flinch. Each time she slipped, he stepped back, anchoring her against the current. Behind her, the shouts grew louder. "She's crossing! Shoot if you have to! That river won't save her!" But the river had already made its choice. Clara fell once, went under, and came up gasping, but the rope stayed taut, steady, unyielding. He didn't speak, didn't yell, just pulled arm by arm until her boots struck stones beneath her and she stumbled into his arms. He caught her like someone catching a log. Not gently, but without hesitation. Her breath came in shudders. Her skin was soaked, lips purple, heart pounding like a war drum. "You," she tried to speak. "Why?" But he didn't answer. He took her hand, turned, and led her up the bank into the trees. No introduction, no instructions, just movement, as if she had always belonged on the other side. Behind them, across the water, she heard her father scream her name. "Clara! You ungrateful wretch!" A gunshot cracked. Bark splintered near her shoulder. The Apache flinched, but only slightly. He picked up the pace, dragging her deeper into the woods until the river muffled everything. When they finally stopped, miles upriver beneath a rocky overhang, he released her hand. She collapsed to her knees, coughing. He knelt beside her and handed her a piece of dry hide to wrap her arms. She whispered. "You don't even know me." He looked at her then, eyes like burnt stone, hard but not unkind. And for the first time he spoke. Just one word. "Enough." She blinked. "Enough?" "You've been hurt enough," he said. "Now you run far enough." She stared at him, shivering. "Who are you?" "Doesn't matter," he said. "What matters is what you are now." "What's that?" she asked. He didn't answer, just reached into his pouch and handed her a string of small, carved beads, warm from his body. She stared at them. "What do they mean?" "They mean you made it across," he said. And somehow, Clara knew. She hadn't just crossed a river. She had crossed into herself. By dawn, the hem of her dress was stiff with dried river water, mud crusted up to her knees. Clara stood beside the small fire he had built, arms wrapped tight around herself, watching the steam rise from her clothes like a ghost leaving her body. The Apache sat a few feet away, sharpening a blade with slow, even strokes. No words passed between them, just crackling flame and shared breath. Clara looked down at the dress. White lace, ripped and brown now, torn at the shoulder where her groom had grabbed her. Stained where her father's spit had landed that morning. It clung to her like shame. "I want it gone," she said. The Apache didn't look up. "Burn it." She hesitated, then pulled it over her head, slow and shaky, and tossed it onto the fire. The flames caught fast. The skirt curled inward. The lace turned black and cracked. But even as the bodice shriveled, one part of the dress, a folded corner of the lining, refused to burn. It smoked, it blackened, but it wouldn't disappear. Clara stared. "Why won't it go?" The Apache stood, walked over, and knelt beside the fire. He used 2 sticks to lift the stubborn piece out of the flame, unfolded it. Inside, stitched in near-invisible thread, were initials, E.W. "Not yours," he said. "The last girl's?" He nodded. "Your groom? He's done this before?" "Twice." Clara swallowed. "Did they make it out?" "One ran. One didn't. And the one who didn't." He looked into the woods. "She's under the church." Clara's stomach twisted. She stared at the initials, her voice a whisper. E.W. The Apache handed her the charred cloth gently. She didn't vanish. She became a warning. Clara pressed it to her chest. The fire popped behind them, and tears slid down her cheeks. But not for herself this time. "I won't let her story end like that," she said. "Then carry it," he replied, "and don't stop walking." She looked at him. "Will you walk with me?" He paused, then nodded once. "Until the river forgets your name." And they stepped into the forest, the fire fading behind them, but the weight of what refused to burn still clutched in her hand. The saddle was old, its leather cracked, but it held her steady as the Apache guided them through the foothills. Clara sat behind him, arms wrapped around his waist, the rhythm of the horse numbing the soreness in her legs. Still, each jolt pressed the edge of the saddle horn against her right shoulder, over and over, until the flesh ached and pulsed. She didn't complain. She couldn't. Not after everything he'd done to get her here. When they finally stopped beneath a grove of pine, he helped her down gently, then wordlessly unrolled a blanket and motioned for her to rest. She lowered herself onto the soft ground, her whole body sore, every muscle buzzing. "Your shoulder," he said. "Let me see." She hesitated, then turned. He pulled the torn collar aside. The skin was raw, already bruising. "You should have said something," he murmured. "Pain isn't new," she said. "Neither is silence." He met her eyes, and for the first time, something flickered there. Understanding. Not pity. "The scar on your chest," she asked. "That from war?" He shook his head. "That's from trusting the wrong white flag." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe we're not so different." He cleaned her shoulder with water from his pouch, tore a strip of cloth from his own shirt, and bound the wound with care. "The body remembers," he said. but the mind chooses what to carry. She smiled faintly. Then maybe I'll let this turn into a feather instead of a bruise. He looked at her strangely. That's what it is already, he said. She frowned. What is? The mark. You were pressed down, but it didn't break you, just shaped you. She was quiet a long time. You speak like someone who's lost a lot. Enough to know what stays, he said, and what doesn't. What stays with me, she whispered, is how you saw me on that riverbank. No one's ever looked at me like that before. He didn't respond. Just rose, walked a few steps away, and watched the trees. But she saw his hand, how it curled into a fist, then opened slowly. Like maybe her words had left a mark, too. Not a wound, but something that might become a name. They reached the trading post at dusk, just beyond a bend in the hills where pine gave way to dry brush and whispers. The Apache kept to the edge of the trail, staying in the shadows. Clara walked beside him now. Not behind, her shoulder still aching, but her steps sure. The trader eyed her as she approached the wooden stall. Name? He asked, squinting. She opened her mouth. Froze. Her real name felt heavy on her tongue. Branded. She paused. Wren, she said instead. The name fluttered out like a wing. Wren Miles. The Apache looked at her, but said nothing. The trader grunted, jotted it down in his ledger. Weren't no Wren on that wedding list, he muttered. Good, she replied. She's not coming back. They traded for flour, salt, and a roll of thread. The Apache offered nothing, but the trader didn't question him. Maybe it was the paint on his chest. Maybe the eyes that didn't blink. As they turned to leave, Clara held up the charred dress scrap. You ever seen these initials before? E.W.? The trader blinked. Emmeline Ward. Sweet girl, vanished last spring. She didn't vanish, Clara said. She was buried beneath a church. The trader stared. You sure? I was supposed to follow her, Clara said, but I didn't. She tucked the cloth away. Not anymore. They walked until the post disappeared into dust. Wren, the Apache said finally. Why that name? Because a wren is small, she answered, but it sings loud when it's ready, and it builds homes from broken things. He nodded slowly. It fits. She turned to him. What's yours? You wouldn't pronounce it right, he said, not unkindly. Try me. He studied her a long moment, then said, Talon. Talon, she repeated. Like the claw? Like the part that holds on when it flies. She smiled. Then I guess we're both more bird than girl or man. He nodded once. And for the first time, not as rescuer and runaway, they walked as equals. Two names not in any church book, carving their own record beneath the stars. Rain rolled in by midnight. Sharp, silver needles that lashed through the trees and turned the earth to dark soup. Talon led them beneath a stone overhang just before the downpour swallowed the trail. Clara sat with her knees tucked to her chest, the Apache blanket draped over her shoulders. He didn't speak. He rarely did. But his silence never felt empty. It felt like shelter. The wind howled like wolves circling a dying fire, and for a moment it shook her. How fragile she was out here. No walls, no locks, just sky and skin and breath. She looked at him through the rain-veiled firelight. I dreamed I was back in the church, she said, walking down the aisle. No one noticed my feet were bleeding. No one looked at my face. Talon didn't flinch. And then? I looked up, she whispered, and I was marrying the man who put me there. He met her eyes. But you woke up. She nodded. Still shaking, though. He reached for a small pouch, pulled out something wrapped in hide. Hold out your hand. She obeyed. Into her palm he placed a stone, Smooth, dark green, warm despite the cold. "What is it?" "From my mother," he said. "She said if you can hold on to something through a storm, it becomes a part of you." Clara stared at it. "Was it hers?" "No," he said. "She gave it to the girl I lost." Clara looked up sharply. "You tried to save someone else?" He nodded. "Too late." "And now you give this to me?" she asked, voice soft. "No," he said. "I'm giving it to Wren." She pressed the stone to her chest and closed her eyes. "Then I'll keep it until the storm forgets me." Outside, thunder cracked. Trees groaned, but inside the cave, she didn't tremble. The rain could beat, the wind could scream, but Wren would hold on. And when she did sleep, she didn't dream of the isle. She dreamed of the river, and the hand that pulled her through. The first shot rang out just after dawn. Talon had felt it before he heard it. Something off in the wind, a rhythm too still. He shoved Wren flat just as the bullet split the bark behind her. She gasped, hitting the ground hard, the green stone still clutched in her palm. "They found us?" she whispered. He didn't answer. Didn't need to. Another shot echoed from the ridge. Then a voice, her father's. "Bring her back and we won't hurt the savage." She flinched. Talon crouched beside her, bow in one hand, eyes locked on the tree line. "You can't outrun us forever, girl," the voice called. "We brought the groom this time. He's got papers. Lawman'll back him." Wren's stomach twisted. She peeked around the boulder. 3 riders. One was her father, one was the preacher's son, her groom, grinning like the devil in Sunday shoes. The third wore a badge. She looked at Talon. "We have to run." "No," he said. "We make them choose." "What does that mean?" He pulled something from his belt, another rope, but this one frayed, weathered, and tied in a broken knot. "This is what they tied the last girl with," he said. "We give it back." Wren stared. "They won't care." "No," he said, "but you will." He stood up slowly, rope in one hand, bow in the other, and stepped out from behind the stone. Wren's heart stopped. "Talon!" But he was already walking. Her father raised his rifle. "You move one step closer and I'll—" Talon threw the rope into the dust between them. The badge man looked confused. Her groom sneered. "Think we care about some old string?" Talon didn't speak, just notched an arrow and pointed it straight at the groom's chest. Wren stepped beside him, shaking, but upright. "You want to marry me?" she said, voice shaking. "Then take the rope. Bind my wrists again." The groom blinked. "What?" "Do it," she said. "Do it in front of a witness. Do it while I'm looking straight at you." The badge man frowned. "This what she wants?" "She's hysterical," her father snapped. "I'm not," Wren said. "I'm done being property. I'm done being paper." She took Talon's hand. "Go home," she told them. No one moved. Then the lawman turned his horse. "She made her choice," he said. One by one, they rode off. Talon let the arrow fall, and Wren, still breathless, finally exhaled. The next morning, Talon placed a bow in her hands. Wren stared at it, uncertain. The wood felt heavier than she expected, like it had stories inside it. "I've never used one," she said. "You will," he replied. She looked at him. "You think they'll come back?" He nodded. "Or worse, someone else will." She tightened her grip. "Then teach me." They started slow. Talon guided her fingers, showed her where to place the string, how to stand. She missed the first 5 shots, badly. By the 6th, she hit a tree. By the 10th, she clipped bark. By sundown, her shoulders ached, but she could feel something shifting. Not just in her arms, in her spine, in her breath. She was becoming something steadier. They camped in the valley, away from roads, under the sweep of stars. Talon sat sharpening a small blade. Wren cradled the green stone and watched the smoke rise from their fire. "I was always told women shouldn't shoot," she said. "Shouldn't speak unless spoken to. Shouldn't ride alone." He looked up. "And now? I think maybe I was meant to shoot first." Talon half smiled. "You're learning." She paused. "You ever been married?" "No." "Loved someone?" "Yes." "What happened?" She chose fear. "I chose distance." Wren nodded. "And now?" "I chose you." The words landed softly, like ash, not heavy, not hot, but real. She looked at him. "What if I'm still afraid?" He tossed another stick into the fire. "Then we stand still together, until you're not." She held the bow in her lap and stared into the flames. "I don't want to run anymore." "Then we don't." Silence. Then, "Can I choose to stay?" "Not because I'm hiding, but because I'm ready?" Talon looked at her. "That's the only reason worth staying." Wren smiled, a quiet, tired smile, but one born from truth. "Then tomorrow," she said, "you teach me how to make arrows. And after that, I teach someone else." The fire snapped. The stars blinked awake. And the girl once forced to kneel in a church now sat upright by the flames. Bride, survivor, and student of the aim. They found a ridge by the canyon where the wind carved stories into stone. Wren stood at the edge, her braid loose, bow slung across her back, and the green stone still warm in her pocket. Talon knelt nearby, building a small ceremonial fire from cedar and sage. "You sure?" he asked. She nodded. "I need to bury the girl who wore the dress." The wind tugged at her dress, no longer white, no longer stained, just fabric, just hers. She took the charred corner of Emmeline's wedding dress from her pouch, kissed it once, and laid it in the fire. It caught slowly, curling into ash, and then she added the rope Talon had kept, the one used to bind the last girl. It burned faster, like it wanted to be gone. Talon watched in silence. Wren didn't cry. "I was born Clara June," she said, "named by a man who bartered me like cattle, buried by a church that never prayed for me." The fire snapped. She reached into her pack and pulled out a smooth stone she'd etched with a sharp flint. It bore only one word. Wren. "This name," she said, placing it beside the flame, "was chosen, not given." Talon stepped beside her, holding a small feather. "From the red-tailed hawk," he said. "It flies high, but always comes home." He tucked it into her braid without asking. "So you remember what you are?" "What's that?" "A woman who crossed a river and never looked back." She turned to him. "And you?" He didn't answer at first. Then, "I used to think silence was strength. But maybe it's only strength when it's shared." She touched his hand. "You gave me space to become, and you filled it with fire," he said. The last of the rope burned away. The air smelled like pine and smoke and change. Wren stepped back, placed her palm over her heart, and said, "I am not what was done to me. I am what I chose after." Talon nodded. "Then the story is yours now." And as the sun dipped below the canyon's edge, the wind carried no cries, no prayers, no names, just the sound of two people walking forward, with nothing behind them worth turning back for. A month later, Wren stood barefoot on a wooden porch she'd helped build, each plank cut with Talon's tools, each nail driven with her own bruised hands. The cabin sat on the edge of a clearing, its back to the trail, its face turned boldly toward the river she'd once feared would take her. She rocked gently on the edge, a cup of boiled cedar tea in her palm, the green stone resting near the windowsill. It had no shine left, but it didn't need to. It had done its work. Talon walked up from the water with a line of fish in one hand and a proud silence in the other. He set them down on the stump beside the door. 3 bites, he said. She smiled. You or the fish? He shrugged. Both. She stood, stepped down to meet him, and offered the second cup she'd poured without asking. He took it. They drank together, watching the river wind its silver path through the valley. It was quieter now. Not just the land, her mind. I thought I'd want to leave once I was free, she said. And now, I want to plant something here. He raised an eyebrow. Not just food, she added. Memory, meaning. She pointed to the blank beam above the porch. I want to carve her initials there, EW, so she's not forgotten. Talon nodded. And yours? She smiled. Mine's already in the trees. Every step I took to get here is still echoing. He looked at her a long while. You're not a runaway anymore. No, she said. I'm the builder now. She turned, picked up the carving tool, and began pressing the letters gently into the beam. Slow, steady strokes, not in mourning, in honor. When she finished, Talon stood beside her. There'll be others, he said. Girls like you. Then we'll teach them how to build too, she said. Not just cabins, lives. The wind lifted her braid, carrying the scent of fish and firewood. She stepped back onto the porch, faced the river, and whispered the name she'd earned. Wren. And the land, the water, and the man beside her. None of them flinched. Because this wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of a place that would never face the church again. Only the river. Only forward. Please like, share, and subscribe to support more true-hearted stories on Native Western Tales. If you had seen her at the river, would you have thrown her the rope too? Tell us in the comments.